I'm Dan Whittaker. I'm here today to talk to you about the role of the right elbow and how it works on the downswing, the positioning of that elbow and how it relates to a couple of different swing paths, and what the common denominator is with lots of tour pros on how they are able to get that right elbow into the correct position. Now, the way the elbow works on the way down from the top of the backswing is vital to the way that the club head moves. Now, the understanding that a lot of people need to understand is, or that you need to have, is that the elbow and the club head work in opposite directions from one another, generally speaking. So if you have an elbow from the top here, where you're in the correct position there, and it moves backwards, you'll tend to see that the shaft steepens. Okay? So the more it goes back behind, the more the shaft will steepen. Now on a high handicapper, they will tend to see that the club will come outside in, and this will create the cut path for them. And a good player who makes the transition this way, they'll tend to see that they step up, they're trapped from the inside, and they end up inverting the handle upwards. Now if we have a look on the TrackMan information just coming up on the screen now,
we'll see here with Ramon that during the transition here we'll see how this elbow moves back in this direction, and we'll now notice how the golf shaft has steepened over here. You can now see the shaft is steeper than the forearm, but the elbow right in this area is stuck behind the front part of the right hip, which is here. As we take this on further, we'll notice how the hands then have to invert and the shaft steepens. He then holds on to it to try and save the golf shot, because with the amount of, for how inside he's going to be, with how stuck he is, he could hit this a long way offline. We then bring in the TrackMan information here, and what we notice is he was 6.6 degrees from the inside, with a fairly shallow angle of attack. He was only hitting it down like 0.4 of a degree. So the path had him stuck, and he then tried to kind of save it a little down at the bottom, which we saw, but it still had a fairly substantial amount of draw, and the path was fairly big for the iron shot he is.
Having seen that, you can therefore see that the club was definitely coming too far from the inside. It created an inversion here and a chase away through the golf ball. So the right arm had to chase away after impact, creating too much face rotation. Now the face rotation there was then creating, making the ball have a lot of varying starting lines, but the big problem was, because it's come so far from the inside, which we saw there was around 6 degrees, it was creating too much curvature in the air. Now, we see a variety of ways of getting this elbow back into position. There's not just one way of doing it. If we have a look at Miguel Angel Jimenez, just coming up on the screen right now.
Have a look at Miguel here. What we'll see is a backswing that isn't my favourite backswing, because obviously elbow is behind the hip here. It's not something I would like to see my students do, but he makes it work wonderfully well. But what he does is he actually has to start down with the arms a little bit first here. So the arms work over, but as the arms work over, what he does is he gets the elbow to the front part of the right hip here, but he still manages to keep the club head behind the hands. Now the key is why he's such a consistent ball striker is he makes this move happen every single time. The elbow is then on the front part of the hip where it stays. We can see that it's still on the front part of that right hip at impact. This is how Miguel does it, but we can see that it doesn't have to have the absolute perfect backswing to get that elbow to the perfect delivery position, but it will require a few more compensations and cannot be just a natural sequenced move.
We just saw there with Miguel that the elbow was definite behind him here in the backswing, but he works the arms forwards first in the transition and gets the elbow in front here. It's right on the front part of the hip there. That's the key. It's got to get to the front part of the hip. We now have a look at Zach Johnson.
So what we'll see with Zach here is we'll just take it to the top of the backswing, and we'll notice that the elbow is beautifully in front of the right hip here, and he's got lots of room in this direction here for his arms to go in front of his chest. Now what we'll see is that the right elbow just goes straight down in this direction here towards the front part of the right hip. Doesn't need to be any compensations for this to occur. So we get him into the delivery position, which is right here. What we'll see is that he's maximised the retention of his leverage by holding the right wrist, right elbow and left wrist. So he's got all of his power stored, and what else we'll see, the clubhead is still slightly behind the hands at this point, and there's a big triangle of space in between his arms here, with his arms in front of his body, so that he can just naturally deliver the clubhead freely through the golf ball at impact without any
As I just explained now, is that you can obviously see that that elbow was really coming down onto the front part of the hip. That gave Zach a lot of space through here. Now the next example here now is going to be Mr. Hogan. Now have a look at Mr. Hogan's move in the transition. This is going to be absolutely fantastic.
See here with Mr. Hogan is that the right elbow is in front of the right hip here. Okay, so it's beautifully loaded. Now what we'll see is that the club head shallows as the right elbow moves forwards to the front part of the right hip. So take this on, we can now see the club shaft is shallowed and the elbow is moving forwards. We now notice at this point, we draw a line down from the leading edge of the golf club and we go on through the right index finger. The differential of this here is where all the power is going to be felt. The way he's able to utilise this power is because he's got a triangle of air here in between his arms. He's got lots of space, meaning that the right elbow can stay on the front part of the right hip and it will act as the fulcrum as the body opens up. And we can now see that the handle has disappeared around. There's absolutely no chase out whatsoever with that right arm, but this is all due to the way it moves in that transition.
Now we just saw there with Mr. Hogan how from the top here this elbow significantly worked forwards in this way. So there was an external rotation of the elbow working towards the front part of the right hip, and this shallowed the golf club. But because he had all of this space here of his arms in front of his body, he could have the shaft attacking shallow. Now, the bigger the gap is between the right index finger and the leading edge on the club, in this direction here, the more clubhead speed will be generated through impact. Okay, so we could see two great ball strikers in Mr. Hogan and Sergio. Both have this move where the elbow goes forward. Sergio's is more noticeable than Mr. Hogan just due to the fact that his backswing is a lot more upright. Now we'll have a look here on the screen now. You'll see one of my students, Reese, plays for England.
So what we'll see with Reese is from the top right here. Now we'll notice that the elbow works more forwards, so the club shaft has shallowed down in this direction, and we'll notice now how his elbow is on the front part of his hip and the club is attacking from the inside, but his arms are so in front, so he opens up a massive amount through the shot and is still able to hit a baby little cut. Okay, we'll notice how that elbow moves forward whilst the club shaft shallows. So this is the kind of location that you want to see the elbow moving into, the directional move. So it's down here. Now the correlating numbers for this on TrackMan, we could see that the path was still 1.5 degrees out to in, but with a very slightly closed face. This was a gentle butter cut. We then see later on in the session when we hit another shot here, how he's able to still hit draws and cuts, all just dependent on how open the upper body is relative to the target line at impact. This one's a fairly long shot, carrying 174, and the key is though the shot shaping is very easy to do, and the ability to move the ball both ways on very small path numbers based off the fact that the elbow is in front of the hip. This really is the key to it all. So we see here this path number is only 1.5, and we notice with this path number here it's only 1.2, but they're both from opposite sides. So these will produce a curvature that will probably be less than a yard in the air.
Now you can see there with Reese that the elbow came forwards here, yet the shaft was shallow, but due to the way he rotated through the shot here and was so open at impact, he was able to get the arm in front yet still hit a cut. Now the big thing for all of the higher handicappers out there, or the guys who tend to attack very steep and outside in, is to understand that the elbow has got to go forwards. And that actually works very much in conjunction with the way that the left side clears and opens. Now if you tend to get a guy whose head goes forwards in the transition this way, so the head goes forwards, it will tend to get the elbow stuck behind. So the more the elbow gets stuck behind, you then see a back away and throw with the hands. If you get the head staying still as the left side clears, it gives the ability to get the right elbow forwards on the front part of the right hip, and the inside of the elbow is looking upwards, and we can still see how all of the leverage is retained. Then you can unwind, allow the left side to close the gap between the left arm and the side of the body, which then allows the club head to work around via the butt of the club moving inside or inwards towards the body, which creates the closing effect of the club head and allows it to square up. But the big key for everyone out there is you must understand that the elbow in all the top players will never go this way. It will always go forwards. We'd see here with Tiger
here from the top with Tiger is that the hips turn very aggressively, but that the elbow is stuck behind the hips right here. So the elbow is now stuck behind him. He then is very much up on his right toe as he now tries to force the arms in front of the body. So what he has to do is he stops turning, straightens the body up so you can see the lower body straightens, the upper body goes up and back a touch. So the upper body's going back in this direction just a little bit. The legs are starting to straighten up here so the arms can work out in front of the body. Now this has obviously created a lot of timing mechanisms. The arms then got in front of the body and they had to sling it to try and square the club. Now this makes timing the golf shot incredibly difficult, and was something that Tiger was plagued with in his early years and before the swing changes were made and after the 97.
So we saw there how obviously he had the right elbow trapped behind the hip right there, which created a stall out and a fling of the arms, which necessitates a lot of timing. That's something that you don't want to be putting into your own game. You don't want to be reliant on timing. You want to have great mechanics and allow the club to square up via your pivot action. Now, there's a few little bits to be taken out there. It's just making sure that elbow gets forwards in that transition. This is a move by all of the great players. It gets a shallowing and it creates a differential on the way down. But noting that the right elbow goes forwards, the club head can shallow, and the weight of the club is felt in the right index finger. If the right elbow tends to go backwards, creates more of a tip over of the shaft, a steepening move here. So it's the opposite to one another. I hope you found this video useful, and please visit my website, which is danwhitakergolf.com, or if you'd like to hear more from me, please on regular update my Twitter, which is dwhitakergolf, or my Facebook page, which is Dan Whittaker Golf. Thanks a lot.